Hey guys, hope everyone's doing well today. So for today's video, I want to show you guys some more of my collection and talk about what is my favorite set from the WotC, from the Wizards of the Coast era, which is the Gym Challenge set. This set, there's so much I like about this set. First of all, I think the art, is incredible. I remember as a kid when these gym sets came out, these were the last sets that I collected before I stopped collecting as a child, and I was so excited. I thought it was so cool that the gym leader was on the card, and also I loved the Game Boy game so much, and I loved trying to beat all the gyms and wanted to be a gym leader myself. So it was so cool to like own the Pokemon cards of like my favorite gym leaders. So I got a lot of this set when I was a kid. I really liked it. I really wanted to collect as much of it as I could. And so as an adult, when I got back into the hobby, the first set, I knew for sure, the first set that I wanted to collect and try to get in all PSA 10 first editions was this Gym Challenge set. And I also, because I always think about money and value too in purchases that I make when I'm spending a lot of money, because I want to put, if I can, I want to put money into things that I think are going to go up in value. I also felt like this set at the time, like most sets at that time, I pretty much felt like everything was gonna go up quite a bit and had a lot of room to grow. That was just my opinion back when I got into the hobby. But I thought that this set in particular felt really undervalued and underpriced to me, given that particularly some of the cards where the pop reports were pretty low. Compared to like Jungle and Fossil, where all of the pop reports were higher. And so I felt like this was a really underrated set at the time. And of course, like the numbers have really proven that out. This was actually the set that probably moved the first and moved way, way, way before COVID. Well before COVID, in terms of price. I will talk a little bit about some of the prices I paid for these cards. I don't talk about the prices to brag or just to prove how smart I am or any of those sorts of things. So much of this is just luck, right? Like Pokemon, could have not taken off, and I would have lost money on all of these cards. So a lot of investing at the end of the day is luck. But I did choose these initially first, in part because I thought that they would go up in value. And I really want to share the card values, both to give you a sense of like the insane growth we've seen in these cards, and to give you like a really inside look into my thought process. And part of why I also worry about why these prices are so expensive right now. I think that channels, I do not see channels talking a lot about old prices. I hear them only talking about the new prices, and I get concerned that creates this intense sort of like hype around the cards and feeling, like, oh my gosh, these cards are so valuable. They're always going to be so valuable. They must be so valuable. Whereas I think when we talk about the old prices that these were going for, even just a year ago, a year is a very short amount of time. In an investing world. When we think about how much they've grown, I really hope that sort of gives people a pause to kind of think about, wow, like they really have shot up in value. Are they really so different now than they were a year ago? Is the market so different now than it was a year ago? And, I'm going to talk more about that in this video as we move along, because I think that clearly it could be right. And the big growth that we've seen, that retraces may never come. And, and I've heard some different theories recently, which, that like some big players with lots of money are coming into the hobby from like the sports card world and from, and from Magic the Gathering, which has been happening for a while, but particularly from the sports card world, some older people who have a lot more money. And that also could be a big reason why the prices are going up a lot, in part because they may not have the experience or the knowledge or understand how many more of these cards might exist or come into the pop reports in the future. But also they really believe that Pokemon is going to continue to go up and really want to invest in the cards now before it explodes even further. And all of that's possible. It would not surprise me at all if these cards exploded, further in value and continue to go up as we see them continuing. It would also not surprise me at all if they retraced. I think the market and what I really want to preach on this channel is that I think the market's really chaotic right now. And I personally would never invest in something that has moved up this fast, this quickly, because I'm always concerned. I always try to buy things that I think there aren't that many eyes on. There's an undervaluation of what these things are, which is why I was buying Pokemon cards for the last few years, because I thought in some ways I was kind of taking crazy pills, because I was like, well, these are iconic cards to a whole generation and going to be iconic to many generations, and I can buy a lot of these cards for like under $100 in PSA 10 when there aren't that many of them in existence, and they're quite hard to grade, and the packs and booster boxes are going for a lot more. So my thinking was like, okay, pretty safe probably investment, and these cards could go up to thousands and thousands of dollars. What I wasn't expecting was that they were going to go up to thousands and thousands of dollars within a year of when I purchased some of these, or 2 years. Because some of these cards I've actually bought in the last year and a half or so. Some I bought right when I got into the hobby. And so, yeah, I'll talk a little bit about prices, but why don't we jump in and look at these cards a little bit more. The other thing I would say is that I think people watching this channel could get the wrong understanding of what I'm trying to say in a lot of these videos. I'm not trying to say that these cards can't go up in value and that they won't, and that they shouldn't, because I don't think that they're worth that much. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to say that when you think about investing, it's very dangerous to jump on hype trains. It's very dangerous to buy, after something has moved up, 5-10 times in a very short period. It's very dangerous to buy at that new level unless you really understand why it has gone up that much, and through that understanding you can predict why it's going to continue to go up that much in the future. And for me personally, I just don't really know why the prices have gone up so much. I don't really feel comfortable and confident that that's going to be like a stable pattern that we're going to continue to see at the future. So I personally am not willing to buy at the new prices at the moment. And I would much rather miss out on some gains based on what I would just view as kind of like luck and like random buying. I try to buy things that I understand, and I would rather wait. And if it continues to go up, I that's okay. I'm perfectly fine with that. Like, I will pay the new high established prices once they get established, but I don't like buying things until they're established, until I have an understanding of why they're at the price that they are. And because then I can feel comfortable that I've made like a knowledgeable purchase instead of just sort of like a guessing. It's too risky for me. And I'm a pretty risk averse guy. Even though I put quite a bit of money into Pokemon, I actually thought it was pretty safe at the prices I was getting at, and really the upside on these cards and the potential value in the future really seemed to be there for me. All right. And, plus at the end of the day, as I always say, like, I love looking at these cards. I look at them all the time, and I'm, so happy I own them, and have no interest in really ever selling any of these in my whole life. I'm not sure I would ever sell any of these no matter what the price they got to, unless I really needed them for something in my life. All right, so here's the first card in the set. I am missing, I was not able to complete this PSA 10 set in Gem Mint 10 first edition. I'm missing 2 of the cards from the set, and I've been trying to kind of find them at reasonable prices, but for years I tried to find them, and I really couldn't. One of them is a very low pop compared to a lot of the other cards. That's the Koga's Beedrill, and the other one, the Sabrina's Alakazam. I slept through, and I still remember this. This is the type of personality I have. I slept through an auction that ended up ending at like $90 for a PSA 10 first edition, Sabrina's Alakazam, and that was in sort of the price range I was looking for. I was trying to buy it for around $100. $120 was sort of my limit, and so I definitely would have bid, $120 on that auction, and I missed that auction, and I still to this day remember missing that. Nowadays all the prices on these have gone up so much. And I'm just not willing to pay the new prices at the moment until I feel like the market has really stabilized, and then I might buy those last 2 cards at sort of market or slightly under market price. I'm extremely patient in my collecting. I don't feel any sort of intense fear of missing out, because for me, like, it's sort of like, if I buy the card at market value, I can sell it then at market. I can, it's unlikely if I feel like prices are very stable, it's unlikely that they're then all of a sudden going to have a crazy retrace. Where right now I feel like they could have a big retrace. Nobody knows. So if I buy that Koga's Beedrill, let's say in the future it's costing $3,000, it continues to go up in price, and I have to pay $3,000 for that Koga's Beedrill. I'd be okay with that if I felt like lots and lots of people were also buying it at that price, and that price was stable. Because if I ever needed to sell it, I could. You see my thinking? All right. So basically, I am not someone. I don't have like a need to finish every set, although I would like to. I'm always looking for value, and I refuse. And no matter how much I like a card, this is just me and my personality. I will never pay more than I think it's, or much more than I think it's worth, or much more than I think it's going to do in the future. Because at that point, I would rather just look at it online or look at what someone else has. I'm really only interested in making what I deem as smart purchases, and that's just financially as well, and that's just how I choose to collect. Everyone else, everyone has their own collecting style, and I think that it's perfectly fine however anybody chooses to collect. I know people tell me that they almost have not clinical OCD, but like an OCD feeling of I absolutely need to complete a set, and if I don't complete it, I can't enjoy the individual cards. I don't feel that way. I like each of these cards individually and really enjoy each of these cards individually, and so I didn't feel the need to complete all of these sets. And when I show you other sets, you'll also see that I tend to be missing cards from each set because they just never came up for auction or for a buy it now in the price that I felt comfortable with. All right, so here's the first card. I'll show you this Blaine's Arcanine. Beautiful card. And I will, like usual, I'll show you guys the kind of current going price range for these. Just stunning, in my opinion. This has got to be one of the best cards in the whole hobby. So great. Card has really gone up in value. All these cards have really gone up in value. I'm really amazed at some of the prices of these when I just looked at them. The latest ones, Brock's Ninetales. Great card. Not one of the most expensive or popular ones from the set. This one's a bit quite easy to grade. The Arcanine and the Charizard are also such popular Pokemon. This next one is quite an expensive card and a bit harder to grade than some of the other ones. This is actually one of the last ones I bought and was able to purchase. I think I got this card for about $250. Now it's going for quite a bit more. I'm not exactly sure. You'll see on the screen exactly the price range. But at the time, this was a card that I paid a little bit outside of what I normally would want to pay because I felt like the low pop. It's just very difficult to find this, and I tend to not buy things that much on Buy It Now unless it's a really rare, scarce card that tends not to come up on auction. So almost all of these I actually bought on auction, with the exception of the Charizard. I actually did buy it now, and I think I bought it for about $450, somewhere in there. And this Venusaur I bought for about $200 to $250, and in my mind, that was quite a bit at the time. But I felt pretty confident that the value would keep going up, and they were just very hard to find. A lot of these had lots of copies on eBay. Just to give you guys a sense of what the market was even just a year ago, there were 3 or 4 Brock's Ninetales PSA 10 first editions on eBay. And so when you have 3 or 4 first edition, and to go into potential market manipulation and how markets can really be moved or pushed around by kind of smart people, if I had bought all 4 of those Brock's Ninetales, and I had cleaned out all of the gym challenge set, and they were all going for about $50, $60, $70 a card. Not that much. It would have cost me barely anything to do that. I could have bought them all out, right? And then that would have created that feeling of scarcity around that card. Just like the feeling of scarcity around this card was created for me, because I just never saw it that much. So you really have to be careful, because people can easily sort of create a feeling of scarcity, and then when prices go up, all of a sudden more of those cards can show up. And there may not real scarcity is also going to have to do with, like, are these cards in collectors' hands or are these cards in flippers' hands? And when you see cards that are being kind of sold a lot and moved a lot, you're probably looking at cards that a lot of flippers own. But flippers can also be really smart, and they can actually create that artificial scarcity for a short amount of time. And that's why sort of patience is really important, and being really engaged in the hobby is really important, because you can actually get a sense for cards that tend to be owned more by collectors, which are the harder ones to get and the ones that I suggest you pay a little up for, potentially. And cards that really are not, not a ton of them or all of them, or at least at this moment, are owned by collectors. And a lot of them are actually owned by people who are speculating on them and plan to sell sort of in the near future. And so just being super engaged will help you get a sense of what cards are what, and know when you should jump on a purchase and when you should wait. And I think that's a big problem right now, is people are just very impatient, and they believe that these cards are all gone and they're never going to come back on the market. And that's clearly not true, in my opinion. I just think the odds of like they've all disappeared in 1 year forever, just seems pretty low to me. I can't promise you that. And it is possible that, right, what happened is all of these cards just are now in collections. Like, they were all owned by non-collectors before. A lot of them were owned and graded by non-sort of long-term collectors, and now they've really changed hands and moved into collector collections, where they're going to sit forever, which creates that scarcity. Scarcity meaning not coming on the market, not able to buy it. And that's possible. But I think new product, there are lots and lots of resellers in this hobby, and there are lots of people that make their money off of reselling. And so they have to sell. They have to keep selling. And all the big card stores and those sorts of things, they have to sell their inventory. And so over time, they're also going to acquire more of this inventory at different prices, and more of these cards will be graded. A lot of these cards are very easy to grade. For example, like this Machamp's quite easy to grade. This card you could buy all day at $50 to $100 a year ago, all day. 3 or 4 of them all the time. Now they're going up hugely in price. Now, the art on this card, in my opinion, is amazing. Such cool card. All these cards, so great. And so I think at $50 to $100, they're just great because their eye appeal, and because, how historic these cards are and popular these cards are. Another great card. This card I bought a little bit later. This card was quite hard for me to find and acquire, but still paid about, I think I got a really good deal, paid like $60, $70 on it about a year ago maybe. This next card is one of the, if not the lowest pop card. This and the Golduck, I believe, are the 2 lowest ones. I forget which one is the lowest at this time. They switched, I think, at one point in terms of which one was lowest, but one, gorgeous card. Like a lot of these cards, any card with a huge holofoil pattern like this, very easy to scratch, and this white sort of like, because the Pokemon is so small, and this white, these white types of cards with this huge holo, very easy to scratch. So this card had a lot of print lines, had a lot of scratches, a lot of different things went wrong, particularly the print line issue. This card does not have that. This card is a perfect Gem Mint 10, and I was very happy to pick this up. This is one that this one and the Golduck that I have, I do buy it now because they're just so hard to come by. And we really see that in the prices of these now. The really hard ones, because people want to complete the set in PSA 10, and the really difficult ones are going for thousands and thousands of dollars now. This is, I believe, and you'll see, I'll see if I'm right or wrong after I check, but my recollection, this is always the easiest one to grade from the set, in part because, when we talk about the opposite of the Persian card where it's all hollow, this one is all ditto. And so cards that have very little holofoil pattern in the back are much easier to grade. So that's a really important thing to keep in mind when you're paying for cards. And when you're paying for card condition, when you're paying for graded condition, to understand how difficult things are to grade. This next card, Lieutenant Surge's Raichu. Cool card. Not one of my favorites from this set, but Raichu's always great. I always really like it, and I really like the art on all of these. Here's that Golduck. This card is going for a lot, and I see people really talking this card up like it should be going for a lot more. I heard people like random, these are random people online, but I hear it a decent amount that this card is soon going to be going for 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, 9,000, 10,000. And, people like to throw out a lot of numbers. It's really important to know that nobody really knows. And to understand the history, I bought this card for $250 about, somewhere in there. Not that long ago, like less than maybe about a year ago. I think I bought this like right before the prices really started to spike on maybe a year and a half ago now. It's so hard to remember exactly when I buy these things, some of them, but I usually have a pretty good memory for it, and I would say around in that period. And again, I paid to buy it now. This card was sitting buy it now for a while at that price, and I was willing to sort of pay it because this was a low pop card, and I thought that this set would go up in value, and I wanted to own it. I think it's a cool looking card. But again, at that time, no one was paying that price necessarily. Like, it was sitting on buy it now. So it takes often when people aren't doing something and you can think for yourself is when you can actually get deals. When everyone's saying that cards should be worth thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars and there are tons of eyes on it, and every time one of these come up, everyone freaks out, and everyone's freaking out about them on Instagram, and Facebook on all these things, probably not the right time to buy. Probably, nothing is for certain. But usually it's when hype goes down and people underestimate and undervalue. Like in that Level X video, there's just no hype around those Level X's, or, very little, and that could easily change because I think they're really cool looking cards. And so that's the type of thing you want to think about. Where in this hobby is there no hype where there really should be? Because those cards are really great, because feelings and subjectivity can really change. The danger of that is that no one is going to ever agree with you, right? And then you're never going to either convince anyone, or no one's going to ever come around to what you were thinking. But when I thought about this set, I just, the historic nature of this set, how early this set was, how many people collected this set as a kid, and how much we love the gym leaders, and how unique this set and release was, and how cool the art is, and how popular the Pokemon. It's like all those, and pretty, some of the cards fairly difficult to grade. It has a Charizard. It had all the elements to make a really, really historic, great set that's going to do really well in the long run. And that's why I went for it. And I really like it. As I said, it's my favorite set. Here's the Rocket. Oh, so this one I actually only have in PSA 9. Made a mistake on this one. Had an opportunity to buy it in PSA 10. This card is actually really interesting. It's the first card ever to have 3 different move sets on it, and that's why you see there's a shrunk, like smaller art of Mewtwo, versus the Gyarados you can see is bigger, and all the other cards are bigger because of those 3 moves. Not everyone knows that, so that's adds sort of an extra level of history to this card and potential value or potential interest. Who knows? In the long run. Another great card. Zapdos. I think this might have been the last one that I bought, the newest one that I bought, but still I think I bought it for like $90 in auction, something like that, $80, $90 in auction. Felt very comfortable at that price, felt like a good price. These cards, these cards have gone up so much in value. So these were really not desired at all, I think, a while ago. It was really the Pokemon, a year, 2 years ago when I got into it, which I didn't understand. This is an example of where I don't think people were being very rational, and I think when cards go up in value, then I think people are like, oh, those are the valuable cards, I should buy those. They kind of follow the herd naturally instead of thinking for themselves. I looked at these and I was like, these are hollow, like our favorite gym leaders from Generation 1 in hollow form, and some of them aren't that easy to grade. Others are pretty easy to grade. And I was just like, these were going for like $40 each in PSA 10 first edition hollow, $50 each, and there were like 3 or 4 of each of them on eBay at all times. The highest ones were asking like $80, and that was like really high at that time. Just to give you a sense of like how the mindset works. Whereas now, like, because they started going up in value, I think people are like, oh my God, they're the gym leaders, that's so cool. Whereas before, people were like, oh, hollow trainers aren't very cool, they suck, whatever. Just showing how subjectivity can change so much. I always really liked these. I bought doubles of these things, and I think some of them I have triples just because at $40, $50, $60, I was like, not only do I really like these and I'm happy to have them sit in my collection, but I really see potential growth in some of these. You know. Oh, so here's an example of where I, by mistake, took doubles into my pile. Didn't mean to do that. The Giovanni. Koga. You know, I really like all this. Oh, another double. I didn't take some of the doubles out. And Sabrina. Sabrina and Blaine are my favorite. They were my favorite gyms. I loved the fire-type Pokemons. I loved the Arcanine that he had. And I've always loved psychic Pokemon. And so Sabrina's gym was always really cool. And I remember when I played the Game Boy game when I was a kid, I remember how excited I was when I figured out like how to finally open, you know, the locks to get into, Sabrina's city. So that I could finally beat that gym, and like how you have to like go back and forth on that, you know, in the Team Rocket hideout, back and forth on that little teleport thing or whatever. And I remember finally figuring that out, and it just being so fun. It was great. I remember as a kid, just like when I would play video games, I would never look up how to do them. You know, now it's so easy to look up how everything goes, and so when you were a kid, you had to kind of figure things out for yourself and find your way through, and that was so rewarding and enjoyable. And in those games, you know, I played those Game Boy games so much, and tried to beat them with like every Pokemon, beat them, you know, with teams of all the same Pokemon that I loved. You know, so great. So all of these cards, like when I see this, it brings me immediately back to those memories, to that nostalgia. And that's part of why I love these cards so much, is it was such a carefree, fun, enjoyable part of my life, playing those Game Boy games. All right, so I think I'm going to end the video here. Thank you all so much for watching as usual. I got a mic on this video, so hopefully it's easier to hear me. If it's not, we'll have to keep problem solving that with everyone. I appreciate those who kind of hung around, even though it was difficult to hear for them. What else? We have a cool interview for you guys tomorrow that I hopefully will release tomorrow or the next day. And so I think you guys will really like that. This is another really great one, really exciting. This guy is he's very underknown for how for the importance of his collection. Let me put it that way. And so I'm looking forward to introducing him to some new people who maybe haven't heard of him. And what else? I guess that's everything for today. So thanks again for watching, and I will talk to you all again soon. Take care.